Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fanfiction Variety Podcast. My name's Tim. I'll be your host for today. I've been away for a while. Okay, I haven't really gone anywhere, just haven't had the motivation to do this for a while. I'm just glad that there's probably someone listening to this. I don't know who. I think there might be one person, one or two, might have gotten bored, but whatever. I'm going back to Shinji and the Doctor again. This time I'm looking at the next part of the story. Episode 5, though this is episode 4 of this series. This is episode 5 of the story. Sorry. Tokyo 3 Loop Line 7. Early September 2015. Do you really think he likes me? Kanade asked. Of course he does, silly. Ayase patted her friend on the back. He gave you those flowers, didn't he? You don't think I'm too tall for him? Kanade slouched down further into her seat. She was the tallest in their class. The poor girl. I'm sure he doesn't care about something like that. Ayase pushed her glasses against her nose. He's a waste of time if you ask me, Yuki said. She brushed back her pale hair. Ayase sighed. Yuki always had to act so tough. She was already strong. She was the most popular of the three of them, in spite of her being an albino. But somehow that never seemed to be enough for her. Yuki. Well, he is. Yuki stood up as the train pulled into the station. They needed to transfer to Line 2 here to get back home from their high school since Line 3 was still out of service. I'm sorry, but I just can't stand guys like that. If he really cared about you, Kanade, he'd just say something already. If you can't do that, how deep do you really think his feelings go? Yuki, this isn't about you and Hideki, Ayase said quietly. Did I ever say it was? Yuki crossed her arms. The train doors opened. Sengokuhara Station. They had to wait for the next train, so Yuki and Kanade went to the bathroom. Ayase didn't. All the bathrooms on this line were so gross. Instead, she went to the vending machines and looked for bottled water. They were out, of course. Everyone had been buying as much as they could ever since the government had declared the water supply from the north suspect. God, she hated this station. It's always so creepy here. There was no one else on the platform except for her. The stations on Line 3 were so much nicer. Only that stupid angel hadn't damaged the track. She glanced back at the entrance to the women's bathroom. Her friends had been in there for a really long time. Had Kanade gotten sick again? She walked over and pushed the door open. Kanade? She called in. Yuki? There was no answer. Raising herself against the smell, she walked in. She turned a corner and immediately saw Yuki. Her friend stood at the opposite end of the bathroom, past the stalls. She faced the wall, her back to Ayase. Ayase took a few more steps forward. Yuki? She asked. Is everything all right? Yuki didn't move. Are you trying to scare me again? Come on, you know I'm a big baby. Yuki didn't say a word. Ayase hesitantly took a step back, which was when someone grabbed her in a headlock from behind. Ayase let out a shriek and blanched as the person behind her pressed down on her throat. She recognized the arm around her neck. Kanade, she squeaked. Stop it. You're hurting me. One of the stall doors opened with a click. A man walked out. He was big, really tall, and really old, and really fat. He wore the uniform and hat of one of the subway employees. He turned towards her. Kanade, please let me go, Ayase begged, tears in her eyes. "This isn't funny. This isn't." The subway man opened. Ayase started to scream. Now, if you've been following along, you noticed the sudden end of a chapter. Yeah, if this was an episode of Doctor Who, like an official episode, they would just cut to the opening theme. But because I'm reading this and I don't have the sound clip, you're just gonna have to take my word for it. Just imagine that. As we move on to part 1 of this story. Episode 5, Parent-Teacher Conference. Part 1. Is my child meeting expectations? Class 2A, Tokyo 3, First Municipal Middle School. Early September 2015. Oh man, she's here! There was a loud noise as Toji and Kensuke threw themselves against the classroom windows, followed by every guy in the room, except for Shinji, who held back by his desk. Misato had obviously arrived for Parent-Teacher Day. "That's Ikari's guardian? He's living with a babe like that?" "Idiots," Hikari sniffed. It wasn't that Shinji wasn't interested in what Misato was wearing today, it was just that, well, things had been weird between them recently. Not that he'd expected otherwise. After all, he disobeyed her direct orders. Again. Then he left the battlefield without telling her. He vaguely remembered hearing that they usually shot you in the military for doing things like that. At the very least, he thought you'd be chewed out like never before. She hadn't said a word. Not one. Not when he showed up at the apartment the night after the battle with Jet alone, expecting to be handed his head. And not in the weeks since. She'd been pleasant enough during that time, when she had spoken to him. Somehow that scared Shinji even more than the thought of any punishment could. He couldn't quite say why. He still felt guilty about not telling her the truth, but at this point, how's he supposed to do that without sounding like he'd gone insane? What was he supposed to say? "By the way, my English teacher's an alien who lives inside a little wooden box that's bigger on the inside. He says he's gonna save the world." What was she supposed to do with that? What was he supposed to do with that? You know, what's he supposed to do with that? No one knows. No one knows. I mean, it's just, you have a space alien for a teacher. I don't know what you're gonna do. You just gotta move on. You just gotta go on with your life, and you gotta just sit there and take a sip of water. Excuse me. 4th floor teacher's lounge. The doctor stopped short of the door, a wide chestnut box underneath his arm, having caught a glimpse of the young woman waiting in the room for him. This is who Shinji was living with. Blimey, what 14-year-old hormones and all. It's a wonder the boy hadn't suffered a testosterone overdose. He slid the glass-paneled door aside and walked into the lounge, pushing his glasses back onto his nose. "Right. Miss Katsuragi, wasn't it? Shinji Ikari's guardian?" She nodded. "I'm Mr. Smith, second-year English teacher. Hope you don't mind if I move things along. Got a very full schedule today, and you and I have some very serious business to discuss. Namely this." He set the chest down on the table in front of her and opened it. Misato Katsuragi looked at the box, then at him. "Borrowed it off the school librarian. Lovely woman. Christmas present from my son in Los Angeles." The doctor poked through the various packets of tea inside the chest. "Now I got Earl Grey, English breakfast, Assam, Darjeeling. I suppose this is some variety of green tea, though I wouldn't quite trust it. It's a bit dodgy, those herbal blends." She gave him a small smile. The doctor turned towards the kettle and the small mini-fridge along the back wall. Mind you, it's not a proper cuppa without milk. Hope you don't mind soy. It's all we've got, with all the fallout embargo and all. I did once meet a Ukrainian fellow who swore radiation added to the taste. Didn't really have much in the way of teeth left, though, so I don't know if I trust... There's the click of safety being switched off. It came, unless the doctor was mistaken, from the fairly large handgun Captain Katsuragi had just pressed to the back of his head. He hadn't so much as heard her move. The doctor swelled. "Why," he said, "I suppose we could try the chamomile if you insist." Part 2. Is my child getting along with others? Daihakone Station, 3 blocks to the south. It flowed from out of the tunnels and through the deserted subway station. Without a sound, it crawled up the stairs and out onto the open streets. 4th floor teacher's lounge. Well, the peppermint. I could settle for the peppermint. The doctor very carefully held up his hands to either side. Maybe the decaf, though, just a thought. "Who are you?" Captain Katsuragi growled. "Shinji's English teacher, didn't I say on the way in? I thought I said I'm not in the mood to be patronized today." "Yeah, I gathered that." The doctor tried to sneak a glance back towards her. She'd hidden her eyes behind her sunglasses, light gleaming off of the mirrored lenses. "Look, not to be blunt here, but is there a particular reason you're pointing a gun at my head?" "You tell me, doctor," he winced. Pro tip, we are capable of monitoring sounds and conversations within our entry plugs, especially when the pilot forgets to shut off his mic. Should have rigged the mobile to jam the signals. He muttered. Knew I was missing something. See, that's what happens when you rush things. "So you are the doctor, then. The man Shinji met on that train." The captain adjusted her grip on the pistol. "I appreciate what you did then, but this little game ends now. Nerve will not tolerate outside forces manipulating our pilots, and I won't tolerate anyone putting Shinji's life in danger." Interesting choice of words. The doctor allowed an edge to creep into his voice. The edge. Ow. Considering I'm not the one sending him out to die on a regular basis. 1 block to the south. Officer Kitazume. Key to squad car's radio. Dispatch, this is 4319. Are you seeing what I'm seeing here? Confirm 4319. The dispatcher replied. We have you on camera. So what is it? Some kind of political stunt? Negative. Nothing's been scheduled for this week. And you're in a restricted zone. There's a sound of typing at the other end of the connection. Sending back up to your location. Please investigate further and report back. Roger. He gunned the car's engine and let out a short burst from the siren. Great, he thought. It had to be one of those crazy new religions then. Like they'd been talking about it on the news the other night. Just what his day needed. 4th floor teacher's lounge. There was a pause behind the doctor. Then another click as the captain fully pulled back the gun's hammer. Huh, he thought. Didn't expect that to hit a nerve. Interesting. So that might not have been the best thing to say right here now. I'll ask you again, the captain said, her voice cold. Who are you? Who do you work for? The doctor raised an eyebrow. Who do I work for? There's a sudden sharp bang in the distance, like a firework going off. The doctor turned around and craned his neck towards the window. Did you hear that? She pointed the gun directly at his face. Did I say that you can move? The doctor rolled his eyes. Oh, please. How am I going to answer your questions if you kill me? Maybe I'm trying to decide if you're worth listening to. He grinned. Oh, I am. And you know how you can tell? How? He looked her in the eye. Or in the sunglasses, at least. Because I don't ignore explosions outside of schools. Especially the ones that give me tea. She looked at him for a moment. Then pulled back the gun slightly. Fine. Just remember, I'm watching you. Wouldn't have it any other way. The doctor walked around her and went to the window. Well, except for the gun, I could really live without the gun. Literally live without it. In fact, I swear you military types in your control is He glanced outside and froze. Sorry. Class 2A. Hey, who are those people? Shinji looked up, bleary-eyed from the sheet of notebook paper he'd been scribbling on. The short-haired girl who sat in the back corner of the class, he couldn't remember her name for the life of him, pointed towards the classroom windows. The class migrated towards her. Hikari and her friends, who had been standing nearby talking, went to what's-her-name's side. Rei, sitting in her usual seat by the window, looked up from the small paperback she'd been reading. Kensuke jumped up from his seat, camcorder in hand. Toji made a big show of stretching his arms, then followed. Shinji glanced down at the paper on his desk, the main features of which consisted of a doodle of a blue box and the words, "I don't know what to do," repeated 3 times and underlined. He sighed and got up. 4th floor teacher's lounge. Captain, I think you might want to take a look at this. The doctor stepped aside from the window. Class 2A. The first thing Shinji noticed as he stood on his toes and craned his neck to look out the windows from the back of the assembled crowd wasn't the column of smoke that leaked up to the sky in the distance, nor was it the burning police car at the end of the street that was generating the fumes. He didn't exactly see the hodgepodge of people, at least 100 or more, that filled the school's parking lot, walking silently in staggered groups toward the main building. He didn't immediately spot that the crowd was mostly made up of students, wearing uniforms from all over the city, albeit with a good number of middle-aged professionals and subway workers. The first thing that he noticed was the bone-white masks that half the crowd was wearing. Or rather, he somehow knew immediately, that had grown out through their faces. They had 2 dark spots over the eyes and long pointed chins, like the skull of a bird. Yeah. Okay. Are you people ready for a deleted scene? For a scene that was that the writer just sort of wrote and forgot to put in somewhere because he probably couldn't find a good place to put it. Here's a tea from another universe. Inside the TARDIS, late August 2015. Last week. There we are. The doctor pulled a small electric kettle out from underneath a loose floorboard. He danced around the large console at the center of the room. Now, the real trick is figuring out where exactly to wire it in. Tried right beneath the time rotor once, turned around, found the tea was already made. Brilliant. Right, self-pouring tea. Well, not exactly self-pouring, had to remember to pour it after the kettle was done so the water could travel back and complete the loop. Still convenient and all. Pity about all the Cherenkov radiation. Had some vacuuming to do after that, let me tell you. He turned and finally seemed to notice Shinji standing by the door, jaw open, staring at him, at the rust-colored room, 100 times larger than the box outside, at the strange curving pillars that stretched from floor to roof, at the glass column at the room's center, surrounded by controls and switches and blinking lights, at the staircase off to the side that led even further down to somewhere. Oh, right, the doctor scratched the back of his head. Questions, I expect. This is usually the point where questions come in. Shinji swallowed. How is this possible? He asked, as evenly as he could manage. Nothing too complicated. It's just a bit of space-time segmented off from the rest and curled into a ball. The doctor darted back around the column, kettle in hand. Okay, maybe a little bit complicated. She's called the TARDIS, by the way. I could explain how it works, but you'd probably need about 4 or 5 advanced degrees to keep up, mostly from schools on other planets. Shinji took what little he could understand from that. You're from another planet? Yep. The doctor flipped a switch. Well, not just another planet, from a whole nother universe, technically. Another universe. Right, think parallel timelines, each with its own Earth, and humanity, and Shakespeare, and Tokyo, and sushi. Parallel sushi. The doctor glanced at the screen that had been bolted onto the side of the column at a haphazard angle. Put it another way, imagine an alternate world to your own. Most everything's the same, but there's just a bit that's different. Traffic lights are blue instead of green. Tony Blair wasn't Prime Minister. South won the American Civil War. That one's more common than you'd think, actually. The what? Shinji asked weakly. Far as I can tell right now, main difference between your world and the Earth I know is that second impact thing. Didn't happen in my reality. Well, that and the invasion by giant aliens. Only by normal-sized and largish aliens, mind you, but no great big giant ones. Well, not too many, anyway. Not to mention there doesn't seem to be anyone like me around to put a stop to things. The doctor plugged the kettle into the back of the screen. A shower of sparks erupted from a small panel by his elbow. He grimaced and pulled the cord out. He glanced back towards Shinji. Anyway, where was I again? Shinji opened his mouth, then closed it. The doctor snapped his fingers. Parallel sushi, right. He went to the console's side and started to pull out cables. Now, separate universes aren't supposed to interact with each other at all. Not anymore, anyway, but there was a bit of a mix-up on my side of things. Bit of, well, paradox. Blew a hole straight through my reality and into yours. Didn't actually know you could do that up until now. Probably for the best, that. Anyway, I went in to try to fix things, wound up getting sucked down the rabbit hole, and here I am. Oh. Which leaves me in a great big old pickle, really. The doctor pushed the kettle's plug into the center tube that ran from one of the control panels. Bit of a personal energy crisis. The TARDIS draws its power from the universe. My universe specifically. No other realities need to apply, so I'm cut off. The kettle started to glow with a strange green light and floated up off the console. The doctor shook his head and broke the connection. Good news is, that rift above the city is leaking quite a bit of energy from back home. Well, good news for me, not so good for the universe, either of them. So if I could just gather up and filter enough of it out... You alright over there? You've been fairly quiet and all. Huh? Shinji averted the doctor's eyes. Sorry. Right. The doctor sighed. Sorry? Not to take in. I know, I'm a bit rusty on the whole introductions thing. Been traveling on my own for a while now. Wasn't always like that. Used to knock about with some friends, but, well... Travel? Shinji stared out at the room. This place moves? Oh, yes. The doctor absent-mindedly pulled a cable out from out the console. A handful of oxygen masks sprang out from the ceiling where they hung limply from silver cords. Where was I? He gave them an exasperated glance. All of time and space in the blink of an eye. I take you for a spin, but like I was saying, we're a bit out of commission at the moment. See, the TARDIS pulled in some void energy while we were crossing between worlds. Clogged up the power relays. It's a bit like food poisoning. I can clear them out if I can build up a big enough charge, but until then, she's rejecting anything I try to pull in. Shinji gulped. You talk about it like it's alive. That's because she is. The doctor linked up the cable to the kettle's power cord. Living time ship. Last of her kind in the whole wide universe. Well, last in my universe. Here, I suppose, she'd be the first and the last. He put his hand against the glass column. Poor old girl. I put you through so much. Somehow, for some reason, that was it. Shinji felt something in the back of his mind buckle and fracture in two. He couldn't take any more. He had to. He had to. He bowed stiffly. The doctor looked up at him in surprise. Please forgive me. Shinji said as formally as he could manage. I need to go. He then bolted through the doors and back into the world he knew, as fast as his feet could take him. The doctor eyed the doors. He scratched the back of his head. Then the fifth was standing beside him, arms crossed, a concerned expression on his face. He's not quite our usual sort of recruit, is he? From outside, there was the loud and unmistakable sound of a 14-year-old being violently sick into a gutter. The doctor ran a hand through his hair. Yeah. And now, back to the story. Back to the main story at hand. Back to the parent-teachers conference that got crashed by, I guess, zombies. I don't know. They're the way they describe them. They're zombies with bird faces. Part 3. What are my child's strengths and weaknesses? 4th floor teacher's lounge. Misato gripped the edges of the window, her eyes wide, her nose pressed against the glass. How many other people were there on the train? The doctor asked. Other than the ones Shinji and I met. 6, Misato found herself answering, much to her own surprise. 3 drivers, a conductor, 2 students in the back car, all missing since. Looks like they found some friends then. Catch. Looks like they found some friends then. Catch. Misato spun around and caught her purse out of midair. By the table, the doctor pulled on his long brown coat. Shit, when had he gotten behind her? She raised the gun. What the hell are you doing? Think about it. The doctor looked at her. Why are they here? What's here that they'd want? Misato's brain kicked in. She swore. We're Shinji and Rei. 2nd floor. Come on! They raced out into the corridor. Class 2A. Shinji stood in place, his hands trembling, the feeling of cold sweat on the back of his neck. Oh God, not again, he thought. Please, not again. This isn't fair. The classroom was silent as everyone stared, slack-jawed, out at the windows. Then Rei spoke. Nerve command. She stood by her desk, a cell phone in her hand, the same calm expression as always on her face. Identity confirmation 31LF. That's probably a typo. Identity confirmation 31 Alpha 7. Ayanami Rei. Reporting emergency code 1. Angel incident in progress. Request instructions. Someone towards the back of the room screamed, Quiet! Stop that! Hikari yelled, her voice quavering. Quavering. It could have been quivering, but no. She's quavering. She's quivering and wavering at the same time. She pulled out her own cell phone and frantically mashed at the buttons. Don't panic. Remember the evacuation drills. We can't panic. Someone else started to scream. The door slid open. Shinji glanced back just in time to see 2 of the other boys run full tilt out of the room. He slowly turned his head back to the side. Next to him, Toji had his face screwed up like he was trying to hold back a sneeze. Kensuke crouched down on the floor, his video camera clutched to his chest, a dazed look in his eyes. Kensuke, Shinji heard himself say. His friend didn't look up. Yeah? Didn't you... Weren't you talking about a movie like this the other day? Yeah. Kensuke blinked and shot up onto his feet. Oh, yeah! 2nd floor. The doctor slammed the door to the stairwell shut behind him. He held the screwdriver up to the handle. It locked. What the hell is that? The captain asked. It's a screw... Look, does it really matter right now? He looked down where she was pointing. Further down the hall, just before where the corridor turned to go into the building's other wing. A set of heavy plastic fire doors had been halfway pulled back from the walls. In front of them, a handful of desks had been turned down on their sides. Doctor! Misato! Shinji stuck his head out from behind one of the desks, a relieved grin on his face. Shinji! The captain took off down the halls toward him. The doctor followed. Doctor! Shinji stood up as they approached, his body shaking like a leaf in the wind. Outside, they look just like the thing. That thing on the... The captain started. Yeah, I know. The doctor cut her off. She shot him an annoyed glare. You alright? Yeah, Shinji said. But what? Captain Katsuragi! Kensuke Ida tilted out from behind one of the fire doors and saluted. Toji Suzuhara stepped out from between the doors, carrying a chair under one arm. He saw the doctor and rolled his eyes. Great, she brought the crazy foreigner. Oi, watch it. Ooh, nice firearm, Captain. Is that... Kensuke gawked at the pistol in her hands. Is that an HK compact? Not now, the captain said curtly. Shinji, where's Rei? Back in the classroom with the others. Shinji glanced down the hallway past the fire doors. She was calling headquarters when we left. Perfect. She leaned down and put her hands on his shoulders. I need you to go back down there. Tell her to tell Makoto I want all the support he can get here as soon as possible. Police, security, the defense force, whatever you can get. After that, tell the other kids to get together whatever weapons they can find. Got it? Yeah? Shinji glanced up past her, towards the doctor. The doctor gave him a nod. Go on, he said. We'll be down in just a moment. Okay. Shinji squeezed past Toji through the gap in the fire doors and dashed off. Captain Katsuragi turned and looked at the doctor, a strange mix of disbelief and envy on her face. Which was interesting and all, but the doctor really didn't have time to deal with her right now. Right, he said to the other two boys. What's all this about, then? Oh, standard zombie defense plan, ma'am. Kensuke saluted the captain again as she stood back up. Barricading all entrances and exits until we know the full extent of the plague. Allows us time to gather intel and take stock of our supplies. The captain raised an eyebrow. You have a zombie defense plan? Well, yeah. Kensuke gave her a baffled look. Why wouldn't I? The doctor grinned. Can't think of a single reason. He took the chair from Toji and tossed it on top of the line of the desks. What about the stairwell on the other side, by the classroom? Already blocked off. Kensuke pushed back his glasses. Fire doors and everything. We went there first. Brilliant. The doctor glanced down the hallway. Let's get this plot locked down, then. We can't have much time. Meanwhile, back in the classroom, Shinji slid the door open to the room and stopped short. Given the state of the class when he'd left, he hadn't expected to see everyone sitting quietly in their assigned seats. Probably had something to do with Hikari. She stood by the chalkboard, holding a chair up above her head, a half-crazed expression on her face. He went to Rei. She'd taken out her book again. Misato's here, he said, with, Mr. Smith. She said to tell headquarters to call the police and the army. Already done. Rei turned the page. The police are inbound. Nerve and the defense force are preparing response teams. The estimated time of arrival is unknown. Did you say teacher's here? Misato broke in. Hikari broke in, her voice high-pitched and uneven. Shinji nodded. She put down the chair and sagged her shoulders. Oh, thank God! Everyone in the room immediately jumped to their feet and started talking all at once. That babe is here, the kid with the big nose asked. Could she get us out of here? Did she say something else? Shinji tried to think. She said that we should try to find weapons, just in case. What weapons like what? Well, there's the cleaning brooms, the girl with the thick glasses said. She went to the supply closet in the room and opened the door. She leapt back and screamed. There was something inside the closet, something with a bone mask. It reached out with gnarled fingers. It said in a soft voice. Shinji wanted to help, or scream, or run, but he couldn't move. The thing grasped the girl by the shoulders. A cloud of sickly yellow smog burst out from its mask and into her face. She fell to the ground, gasping and choking. It turned and scanned the rest of the classroom, then lurched toward the next closest target, which happened to be Rei. She punched the thing in the chin, just underneath the point of its mask, collapsed into a heap on the floor. There was a brief pause as everyone stared at Ray, trying to process what had just happened. Nice shot, Ray. Misato swept into the classroom, pistol at the ready, the doctor at her heels. On the one hand, violence in school? The doctor scratched the back of his head. On the other hand, zombies in school? He flipped the switch on the wall. The room's air conditioning came on. The cloud of yellowish smoke hovering in front of the supply closet began to dissipate. Everything unpaused all at once. Shinji felt his knees buckle. He sat down on the floor and tried to breathe. Someone in the room started to cry. Someone else just repeated over and over again, "Oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God." "Tomoe!" Hikari bolted towards the girl on the floor. Wait! Wait! The doctor reached out and grabbed her sleeve. "Might not be safe yet. Just let the fans work." Toji burst into the room, a leg from one of the desks in hand. "What's going on? What happened?" Kensuke crept in nervously behind him with a heavy-looking textbook. Misato fired her gun into the ceiling. "Everyone quiet!" she roared, or at least that's what Shinji thought she said. He couldn't hear her over the ringing in his ears. "Well, that's what happens when you fire a gun in a smallish room. When you fire a gun, don't expect people to just instantly be all, 'Oh, I can hear everything you're saying.'" The room fell silent. Misato turned to Ray. "What commands say? How soon can we expect reinforcements?" "I don't know," Ray said. "Lieutenant Hyuga expected the police to arrive in 10 to 15 minutes. He and the Defense Force are currently pulling together additional personnel for a response. He said it was proving difficult, as most ground assets have been diverted north to assist with the operations in the Fallout Zone. He will call as soon as he has more information." Misato curled her hand into a fist. "He caught us off guard again. Unbelievable." "Still breathing," the doctor said quietly. He crouched down next to where Tomoe laid on the floor, 2 fingers held to the side of her neck. "Pulse is weak." He looked up at Hikari. "Move her over to the front of the room. Carefully." Hikari turned to Toji and gave him a pleading look. He shrugged. Together, they went over to Tomoe. The doctor turned to where the thing from the closet lay. He flipped the screwdriver over in his hand. "Okay, right. Let's see what we've got." Shinji scrambled up onto his feet and went to the doctor's side. Kensuke noticed him and followed. The doctor ran the screwdriver over the thing. Now that Shinji could see the creature clearly, he realized it was a boy, just a bit shorter than he was, wearing a high school uniform. Its limbs and arm were of normal size, and it was thin to the point Shinji could see its ribs poking out through its shirt. It looked for all the world like a student who just happened to have a mask growing out of its face. Kensuke reached out with a finger to poke the thing in the head. The doctor held up a hand. Don't touch the flesh. Not until we know more." He pointed the screwdriver at its face. "Lesions and abnormalities in the frontal lobes. Major buildup of sensory neurons in the nose, under the neck, under the masks. Blimey, he's practically a bloodhound." Under the blue light, Shinji noticed 2 small slits in the mask, right about where he supposed the boy's nostrils would be. Kensuke glanced at the screwdriver. "What is that thing, anyway?" "It's a screwdriver," Shinji said almost automatically. "What? Really?" "Special order," the doctor said vaguely. "Gone off the internet." Kensuke stared at him. "There hasn't been an internet in 15 years. "Oh, so that's why it took so long to get here. Last time I used the free shipping, let me tell you." The doctor moved the device over the thing's chest. "Hydrogen bubbles throughout the bloodstream. Throughout the whole body, really. That's not good." Kensuke shook his head. "So, what do you think caused it to rise as a zombie? Plague or outer space radiation?" "Neither, I think. Look at the scarring on the temples and on the back of the arms. Looks to me like this was something done to them, from the outside in. But that would take some kind of laboratory, surgical equipment. High technology. Unless I'm really not interested in excuses right now, Makoto. Misato snapped. Shinji glanced to see her talking into her cell phone to Lieutenant Hyuga. I need backup here now. She tapped her foot against the floor. Okay, say that again. What? How? She lowered her voice. How do you just lose contact with an entire SWAT team? The screwdriver buzzed. The doctor brought it up and stared at it. The whole digestive tract system's been changed, rerouted and repurposed. The stomach, the intestines, are all just one big sack of gas. I've had a few days like that, Kensuke said. Oh, not like this you haven't. The doctor looked down at the thing, a strange expression on his face. They're producing some kind of paralytic nerve agent. Small trace amounts of cyanide. Nasty stuff. Deadly if you get too much in your lungs. Looks like they can expel it up through the esophagus and through the nose. Shinji broke in. Doctor, why do they all look like that thing we saw on the train? And what are they doing here? Hard to say. The doctor scratched the back of his head. If I had to guess, some kind of backup plan, I suppose? Angel must have put it into effect before we even ran into it. Used the drivers and the rest as raw materials, programmed them to build up forces from the city's population, and track us down here. He stared down at the thing on the floor. But they have that many. Why wouldn't they just... This means they're here for me, Shinji thought. It's all my fault. Again. He gripped his knees and looked away. He knew what he had to do, but he couldn't. What are you talking about? Kensuke stared at both of them. What train? Suddenly, everything shook, like the entire building had been kicked in the gut. Misato immediately dropped the cell phone and pointed her gun at the door. What the hell was that? Toji asked. That was the barricades. The doctor jumped to his feet, his face pale. We're out of time. They're in. Do you want... I'd give you the next bit of bonus material, but it's just what Shinji wrote on there, and really I don't want to waste your time with that. Part 4. How does my child work in teams? Hold on. Okay. Let's get the going. The whispers of the horde outside the classroom filtered in through the thin wall. The shadows of a dozen hands pressed against the door. How many of the things were in the hallway by now? Shinji couldn't even guess. Maybe 30, maybe 100. Doors, the doctor gasped out. He leaned against the various tables and chairs they'd hurriedly thrown against the room's entrance. Big, thick doors with locks. Bit impersonal, I know. All the same, I'd recommend them. None of this sliding business. That's not how we do things around here, Misato snapped. She crouched with her back to the wall next to the door, gun held at the ready. I know, I'm just saying the benefits. Oh, don't do that. Don't. Noxious yellow fumes started to pour through the cracks around the door. The doctor pulled off his coat and stuffed it into the top railing. The rate of incoming smog lessened, though, not by much. We're all gonna die, aren't we? The speaker was the big-nosed kid. His voice monotone, large and elegant tears rolling down his face. He and the rest of the class were huddled in front of the room by the windows. Shinji himself sat on the floor, halfway between them and the two adults by the door. Ray stood in the back of the room, staring out into space. Hikari reached over and smacked the big-nosed kid across the back of the head. Of course we're not. The commander of nerves here. She won't let anything happen to us. She didn't sound very confident. Shinji couldn't help but notice. Misato said nothing. She grimly drew the slider back on the handgun, but then pulled her purse closer to her foot. The big-nosed kid started to cry again. "Oh, God," the short-haired girl whispered. She clutched an ornate wooden cross to her chest. "Oh, God, oh, God, oh, God, oh, God." "Class, stand!" the doctor roared. And Shinji suddenly found himself on his feet, along with the rest of the class. Even Misato stood up straight and sat back down, a pained expression on her face. "Right, last time I make you do that, I promise." The doctor crossed to the center of the room. "Look at me. Look at my face. You're my class. That puts you under my protection. Keep your wits about you. Follow my lead, and I promise you, I will get every single one of you out of this alive." The room was silent for a moment. Kensuke raised his hand. Can you do that?" he asked. The doctor grinned. "Watch and learn." He spun around. "Miss Ayanami, help the captain mind the door. Shinji, see about getting those windows open. Should buy us some time against the gas. Mr. Ida, if you would be so kind as to go to the first aid kit in the supply closet, see if they got any of those breathe masks like you see on the subway. Everyone else find something to cover your mouth and nose, handkerchiefs, piece of cloth, whatever you can find. And, what's your name again? Hadn't called on you yet." "Sadahiko Kabayashi." "Sadahiko, good to meet you. What you bring for lunch today?" "Lunch? Bento box. What kind?" Tuna sashimi and edamame." "Perfect. Go and fetch it for me, could you? I'll swap you my peanut butter sandwich for it. The rest of you lot, get ready to move in a few minutes. We're getting out of this room." "How?" Toji asked. "Working on it. Go!" The doctor rushed over to the windows. Shinji followed him. The rest of the class started to move. Two-story drop. The doctor's eyes scanned over the parking lot outside. Survivable, but aw, look at that. He pointed to the ground beside a white Toyota Cresta. Shinji could barely make out the shadow of a figure crouching behind the car. At least the baker's dozen's still down at there. Probably more watching from the ground floor. Can't risk it not until the police get here. Shinji glanced back over his shoulder at Misato as he pulled down one of the windows. She looked like she was trying to think. "What about your, the blue box? Is there any way you could call it here or something?" "Nah," the doctor muttered back. "Even if I did, no power, remember?" He clapped his hands together and said in a louder tone of voice, "Right, into the window is out. What else do we got? Think. He paced back toward the center of the rooms, tussling his hair. Walls, ceiling, floor, all reinforced concrete, too thick to resonate, except for the one thing keeping the zombies out. It's wood and drywall." Misato jerked her head up. "Wait, drywall?" She put her hand against the wall. "That duck's too small to crawl through, though. That's the first, actually. No garbage chute, no maintenance hatches, no teleports, no gift shop. Blimey, no shop. That should have been my first warning right there." She started to go through her purse. "Dr. Smith, I think I have something." The doctors didn't seem to notice. "Cat tunnel, we're on the second floor, not enough time to build a hang glider, or enough gaffer tape for that matter." "Dr. Smith!" Misato barked. Shinji turned away from the window he had opened part way. Doctor." "Okay, no easy way out, so maybe focus on them instead. Poison gas bloodhounds on 2 legs. How do you fight that? Set off the fire alarms? No, it's not like the giant bats." Misato's sunglass case flew through the air and bounced squarely off the doctor's nose. "How? What was that for?" He glanced down at the offending object. "Wait, Disney's Little Mermaid brand? Seriously? Dr. Smith?" Misato pulled something out of her purse. "I have a plan." The classroom wall screamed as Misato stuck in the thin blade to make the final cut. Excuse me. The device in her hand looked like a box cutter of some sort. Shinji couldn't help but think that it looked somehow familiar, though he couldn't recall seeing anything quite like it before. He stood in between the doctor and Toji, clinging to the side of the wall to steady it as Misato finished up. He tried to ignore the itch on his nose where the breath mask he wore rubbed up against it. There had been enough in the supply closet for everyone in the room, except the doctor, who had donned a tie-dye bandito mask he pulled out from the pockets of his coat. Misato pulled the knife from out of the wall near the floor. She stood up, clipping the device to her belt and drawing her handgun. Give it a moment. Shinji strained his ears. He could hear the things in the corridor shuffling around, and a slight hiss as the yellowish smoke started to seep through the new cracks. Right. The doctor looked back to the rest of the class. Remember, wait until I say go. Then all of you run for the back stairwell. Just run. Don't look back. Sweepers. He nodded to Rei and Hikari, both of whom held a broom. Out in front. Clear a path for everyone. Kensuke, you go behind them. Get those fire doors open. Captain, you and I'll stay back and cover them as long as we can. Misato gave him a curt nod. Alright then. Everyone ready? Are we allowed to say no? Sadahiko said, his voice muffled through the breath mask. He stood holding Tomoe's limp form piggyback style, her arms tied with strips of cloth to his shoulders. Hikari glared at him. Only if I get to say it first. Somehow Shinji could tell the doctor was grinning again underneath the mask. Right, in that case, allons-y! He started to push. Shinji took a deep breath, or as deep as he was willing to take, what with the gas, and strained as hard as he could against the wall. For a moment it didn't seem to budge. Then there was a cracking sound. The majority of the classroom wall fell down into the hallway outside. There was a muffled crash as a few hundred kilos of drywall pinned the thing standing behind it to the floor. The doctor pointed his screwdriver at the ceiling. The fire sprinklers in the hallway burst on, the water sweeping the yellow smog out of the air where it fell. Go! He barked. Shinji stumbled out into the sudden downpour. The thin amount of poisonous smog left in the air stung his eyes. He felt something moving, or trying to move, underneath the wall below his feet. He also saw at least a half-dozen of the things still standing in the hallway by the classroom door. One of them, a scarecrow-thin salaryman without a mask, lurched out towards him. Then Rei was by his side. She jabbed the thing in the face with the end of her broom, then effortlessly knocked out its legs with the handle. It fell to the side. Move, Shinji! Misato shouted at him down the hallway. Shinji ran. The scene in front of him was chaos. He could see most of the class sprinting in front of him. Off to the one side, Toji slammed one of the things down with his desk leg, screaming at the top of his lungs. Shinji glanced over his shoulder. The salaryman had struggled back onto its feet. He saw Misato approach it, her gun raised. No! Wait! The doctor reached out towards Misato, his eyes suddenly as wide as dinner plates. Don't! She pulled the trigger, and the salaryman exploded. Its body evaporated in a blinding flash of light and fire, thick yellow smoke flooding the end of the hallway. The blast threw Misato back a meter into the air and onto the floor. Shinji stopped in his tracks and turned back. He could just barely hear himself screaming or shouting something. Two masked high schoolers leapt out of the miasma, reaching and grasping at her. She kicked out at one of them, caught it in the chest, pushed it back. The other grabbed her leg and started to pull her back into the smoke. Then a piece of chalk came whistling through the air and beamed the thing right in the temple. It lurched back, letting go of her. The doctor jumped in and put a single hand over its masked face. It abruptly spasmed and fell to the floor, its arms and legs twitching. The doctor turned and held out his hand to Misato. Come on! She grabbed his wrist and let him pull her back onto her feet. Shinji skidded to a halt in front of them. Are you... I'm fine, Shinji. Misato waved him off. Just get to the door. You heard the captain? Go! We'll be right behind... The doctor glanced over his shoulder. The other high schooler, the one Misato had kicked, was getting back up. Can I have that back now? Could I have that back now? Oh, yes. Misato let go of the doctor's arm. Thank you. The doctor turned and hurled another stick of chalk right between the thing's eyes. It fell back onto the floor. Fire hose, 2 doors down the hole on the left. On it. Misato shook her hand as if to clear it. Shinji, go! Shinji opened his mouth to say something. But then 3 more masked things emerged from the smog, and Misato pulled the knife off of her belt, and the words flew out of his head. He turned and ran. He turned the corner to find Ray waiting for him by the open fire doors. The adults? She asked. They're coming. Ray nodded. It won't open, Toji shouted, his voice on the edge of hysteria. It's locked! The rest of the class clumped together by the entry to the stairwell. Toji pounded frantically against the heavy metal door. It didn't budge. Shinji glanced down the hall. No sign of the doctor or Misato yet. He felt his hands starting to twitch. Excuse me, Ray said. She stepped in front of Toji. She put her right hand on the door, just behind the handle. Holding onto the frame with her left, she started to push. One of the girls giggled nervously. Ayanami, Kensuke said, that's really not going to work. It's steel. There's a sound not unlike a beer can being slowly crushed. Then the door's lock tore free from the frame. The giggling stopped. Holy smeg. Well, Kensuke breathed. Well, yeah, after I loosened it for her. Toji crossed his arms. Ray stepped back, rubbing her wrist. Shinji couldn't help but notice that she'd left her handprint embedded in the door. There was the sound of scrambling from down the hall. Shinji jerked his head up just in time to see the doctor and Misato sprint around the corner and leapt the line of desks in the middle of the hallway. The doctor pointed the screwdriver at the door as he ran up. Sorry, he gasped out. Stupid thing. Forgot I locked it. He stopped short as he noticed the door was already ajar. Oh. He saw the handprint and raised his eyebrows. Oh. Everyone stand back! Misato pushed her way through the class to the entryway. She took something out of her purse. In one fluid motion, she cracked open the door, tossed the object into the stairwell, and pulled the door shut. Wait, was that a hand grenade? There was a massive, dull burst of sound inside the stairwell. Flames licked the edge of the door, then subsided. Misato kicked open the door, gun held out in front of her. She walked out into the scorched landing, then stopped short. Down the stairs below them, Shinji could hear the sound of footsteps, and a cacophony of voices repeating that same miserable word over and over again. Hurt. Third floor! Kensuke suddenly yelled from the back of the class. He hopped nervously from foot to foot. Trust me, go to the third floor! The doctor eyed the stairs down. Works for me? Everyone up to the next floor, Misato shouted. Move it! They ran up the stairs, the chorus of tortured moans growing ever closer. Excuse me. Part 5. What challenges will my child be expected to master? The next few minutes happened on fast forward for Shinji. When the world resumed normal play, he found himself fuddled, sopping wet, heart pounding, legs aching on the floor of the corridor. The rest of the class crowded around him, leaning against the walls or lying on the ground, exhausted. The fire doors between them and the stairwell had been shut, and, for good measure, backed with a pile of desks that reached up nearly to the ceiling. Also, the doctor seemed to be yelling at Misato. A hand grenade? In a school? Don't be such a baby, Misato said irritably. It was just a flashbang. You could have killed us all! She grumbled something under her breath. The doctor rubbed his temples. Struth, you military types, always hard work. Listen, you even saw it for yourself. Those people down there are saturated with hydrogen. Anything, any sort of heat or shock could set them off. Saturated with... Wait, you knew they would explode? Well, Misato's eyes started to twitch. Look, alright, maybe I forgot to bring it up. Misato ground her teeth together. You forgot? I had a lot on my mind down there. I can't think of everything. Besides, I didn't think you'd just start shooting people. I had a gun. What else was I gonna do? Hug them? Wait, don't knock it until you've tried it. Hey, don't knock it till you've tried it. God, would they just shut up and get a room already? Toji grumbled. He looked upset. Seriously? Hikari murmured. She typed rapidly into her cell phone, her eyes flickering over the screen. Misato growled and turned away. Just go buzz the doors again or something. She stomped down the hall. The doctor made a face at her back, then shook his head. Right, pardon me then? He waded onto the pile of exhausted students and pointed his screwdriver at the wall above Shinji's head. What are you doing? Shinji wheezed. His throat felt scratchy. The doctor glanced down at him. Reversing the electromagnets on the fire doors should give them a bit more oomph if someone tries knocking them down. Shinji nodded. That made sense, he supposed. Back downstairs, he said, when you put your hand over that one thing's mask, and it fell down. Oh, right. How'd you do that? Did you, pinch its nerves or something? Ah, well, kinda. The doctor held up his left hand. Shinji could see a thick green paste spread across his palm. Wasabi from that lunch pack shoved a bit of it up his nose. Don't think he'll be spilling too much for a while. Kensuke started to laugh. It turned into a coughing fit about halfway through. You made an anti-zombie weapon out of wasabi? That's awesome. Yeah, about that. The doctor tugged his ear. Didn't want to say something until we were out of trouble, but you really shouldn't call them zombies. What? Kensuke tilted his head to the side, perplexed. Why? Because they're not dead. The doctor lowered the screwdriver. Oh, they've been reprogrammed on the neural and genetic level, twisted and lobotomized. But they're still people, basically. Kensuke made a sound of horror and disgust. You mean they're fast zombies? Oh, come on, Toji broke in. So we're supposed to start worrying about them now? Right, Kensuke said. I mean, we can't. It's not like they're human anymore, right? The doctor gave him a sad look. Back on that last floor. Did you get a good look at their feet? Their feet? Kensuke tilted his head to the side. No. They weren't wearing any shoes. The doctor turned and pointed the screwdriver at the opposite wall. They had them when they came in, so why'd they all stop to take them off? Kensuke blinked, then swallowed and looked down, ashen-faced. So what? Toji asked. Meaning they stopped to take their shoes off because that's what people do here. Well, the doctor glanced down at his trainers. Sent me that as it's a conditioned response, like standing up when the teacher comes in or raising your hand to ask a question. And if something like that could make it through the programming, well, might take some time, but could be that it'd all come back given the chance. That couldn't be right, Shinji thought. They had to be things, they had to be its, because if they were actually people, it could be... He thought about the face of the salaryman downstairs, just before Misato had shot him. Then he thought about the first angel, looking up at him, and almost mournfully as the Eva tore it to shreds. He gagged and started to pull himself to his feet. He couldn't think about that now. If he did, his mind would break in half. He had to do something. The doctor noticed him stand and reached out. Wait. Take it slow. All of you, take it slow. You've got less lung capacity than me. Gas is gonna affect you more. Shinji waved him off, coughing. I'm okay. Really? We're gonna need more desks for the other side, right? He stumbled over to the next classroom down the hall and slid open the door. He promptly found himself staring down the barrel of a very large gun. Ah, the VLG. That's my favorite weapon from Doom. Alongside the super shotgun. Or is that what the super shotgun was? No. I'm thinking of the BFG. Misao turned the hallway corner and stopped short. The corridor had already been barricaded, desks and chairs stacked in neat columns behind the fire doors. She glanced around and walked forward another few steps. Sorry, folks, this is a live reading. My editing skills are crap, so you're getting the whole thing. It's like an unedited Dahid and Nogla video. So pretty much like every Nogla video. Anyway. Area's clear, Captain, Ray said from behind her. Misato tried her best not to flinch as she turned around. What was it with people sneaking up on her today? Ray, she said, did you do all this by yourself? Yes, ma'am. It was times like these that reminded Misato just how little she knew about Ray. Oh, she was an excellent soldier, well-trained, polite, incredibly disciplined for her age, but there was something about the girl that made the captain feel vaguely uneasy. It would have been helpful if I'd known you could do this, Ray. I apologize. I was told it was to be considered non-mission critical information unless necessary. Orders from the commander, no doubt. Maybe there really was such a thing as being too disciplined. Misato scratched her chest. I heard some things on my last assignment, she said conversationally. There's some rumors of genetic engineering experiments on human DNA. Artificial evolution, cybernetic enhancement, that sort of thing. I see. Ray's face stayed perfectly still. Back down the hall, Shinji screamed. Misato looked up. Ray was already a blur in the air, heading towards the source of the sound. At least we have that in common, then, the captain thought. She sprinted after her. Pressing himself against the hallway wall, Shinji solemnly promised himself that he would never again open a door. I said that old line wrong. You get to hear me say it again. Pressing himself against the hallway wall, Shinji solemnly promised himself that never again would he open a door. Ever. Oh, it's you, Ikari. Elderly Mr. Gungo, the science teacher, peered at him over the sights of the jet-black shotgun. Behind him, a number of third-year students nervously gawked at Shinji. Good. Oh, Mr. Congo, good to see you, sir, the doctor snapped. Now would you mind not pointing that thing at a student? 2 students, he added as Ray suddenly appeared between Shinji and the end of the barrel. If you insist, the old teacher lowered the rifle. You made it. Good. Further down the hallway, Misato let the hand holding the pistol fall to her side. Oh, so you're here too, Katsuragi. Mr. Congo looked at her. I was wondering who put a bullet into the floor of my classroom. She grimaced. Sorry. The doctor eyed the rifle. Semi-automatic shotgun, Italian-made, military grade. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I recall that being covered in the benefits package. It's okay. He's with nerve, Misato said. He's part of the security detail we have assigned to the school. Military training and an education degree, the doctor said. That must make for one hell of a CV. The old teacher shrugged. They did hire me to teach math. What's your status here? Misato asked. All third years accounted for. Mr. Congo pointed his thumb back to the classroom behind him. Also managed to collect the parents on this floor, plus a few that wandered down from the 4th after the attack started. Misato looked to the doctor. How many people are there in the school? Just the A sections of each grade today, so 90 students maybe, plus faculty and the parents. Dr. Winston covered his eyes. Ugh. Fuck, I have to say that all over again. Shit. Misato looked to the doctor. How many people are there in the school? Just the A sections of each grade today, so 90 students maybe, plus faculty and the parents. The Dr. Winston covered his eyes. And the first years would have been on the ground floor. Stupid. Didn't even think of that. Misato nodded gravely. All right, next order of business. All right, next order of business then. She raised their gun and pointed it at the doctor. Shinji froze. Oh God, he thought. She knows. Misato, he asked. What are you doing? Ray quietly stepped back away from the doctor. Mr. Kongo raised an eyebrow, but did nothing. This again? Seriously? Who are you? Misato demanded. There's no way in hell you haven't been trained for this. The doctor tilted his head. Well, training, experience. The Magi system has nothing on you. No history, no identity, just enough false data to avoid tripping any security flags. That takes resources. At the very least, the backing of a major power. Misato steadied her grip on the pistol. And in case you haven't noticed, Doctor, I'm not in the position today where I can afford to have unknown factors hanging around at my back. Oh, fine, if we have to do this then. He pulled the leather wallet out of his pocket and tossed it to her. Misato caught it. She flicked her eyes to the piece of paper and back. You work for the UN? The doctor shrugged. I consult. Sometimes. United Intelligence Task Force. Misato stared into the wallet. Shinji snuck a look at it. The paper still looked blank to him. Never heard of it. Well, then someone must be doing the job, obviously. Misato narrowed her eyes. Even assuming that's true, why all the secrecy? You could have just told us who you were. I have some concerns about your organization. Misato opened her mouth. The doctor raised a hand. And let's just leave it at that for now. We should probably do something about the mortal danger we're in before we get into another row, shouldn't we? Misato's cell phone rang. She glared at the doctor, then reached to pull it out. Must be some concerns if you're willing to play... Must be some concerns if you're willing to play games while the entire world's at risk. She flipped open the cell phone. Shinji could barely hear Lieutenant Hyuga's voice say something through the speaker. He saw his mouth curved into a grim smile. Excellent. She turned away from the phone and looked at Kongo. Army's here. The old teacher snorted. They call that a response time? What a disgrace. Don't get me started. Misato went back to the phone. We're on the 3rd floor, Makoto. I want teams on the roof and on the ground floor. Rubber bullets only. No, wait. The doctor leapt forward and took Misato by the shoulders. Surprised, she dropped the phone and pressed the handgun to the underside of his chin. Listen to me. You have to hold them off. Establish a perimeter. Cordon off the school? But don't enter. Not yet. What? Why? Trust me. Or better yet, don't. Have your scientists run the number. If every one of them locked downstairs is generating hydrogen, they've still got more than enough biomass to bring down this entire building. Oh, are you freaking kidding me? Toji shouted, his voice hoarse. He and Kensuke leaned against the wall a few meters away. One, let go of me, Misato snapped. The doctor obligingly held up his hands. Two, if that's the case, why don't they just do it? I don't know, the doctor said. Something in their programming, some kind of secondary objective maybe. But bring down too much force on them. How much do you want to bet they'll go to plan B? Misato stared at him. On the floor, Shinji could hear Lieutenant Hyuga yelling something through the cell phone. She glanced down at it, then looked the doctor in the eye. We're not finished with this conversation. Fine, but I'm begging you, just help me keep them safe. Please. She looked away and sighed. Reluctantly, she lowered the gun, then bent down to pick up the cell phone. I'm fine, Makoto, she said into it. It's all right. Listen, hold off on those previous orders, okay? I need to talk to Ritsuko. She turned away from the doctor. Shinji let out a long breath he hadn't even realized he'd been holding. The doctor stepped back and absent-mindedly scratched the back of his head. Something else, he muttered. There's something else I'm missing. He looked over at Kensuke. Back in the stairwell, you told us to go to this floor in particular. Why? Kensuke shook his head. This is the plan, he said. The defense plan. The next step was to take this floor. Why? Kensuke pointed past the doctor to a door at the end of the hallway. The sign above it read, Chemistry Lab. The grin on the doctor's face was so wide, Shinji wondered if his head was going to split in two. Ah, brilliant! Pretty good, right? Kensuke said, a bit more animation in his voice. Figured we can use it to make bombs or acid weapons or something. Weapons? Weapons? The doctor was doing that thing where his voice went all squeaky again. Shinji knows. Who needs weapons? We got science! Come on! He dashed down the hallway, giggling silently under... He dashed down the hallway, giggling slightly under his breath. I believe that TV tropes refers to the sort of thing that just happened as a locking MacGyver in the store cupboard. That's one thing you don't want to do. If you do that, you're fucked. Hold on. Oh, God. Jeez, this is a long one. Part 6. How will my child be evaluated? The next thing Shinji knew, they were all crowded outside the door to the chemistry lab. Even Misato stood off to the side, cell phone pressed to her ear, a sour expression on her face. Shinji tried not to look at her. The doctor had shut the door behind him. Inside the lab, Shinji heard cabinets being thrown open and objects being tossed around, punctuated every now and again with the sound of something expensive shattering into pieces. Hey, Shinji? Toji poked him in the back. Look, just who the hell is this guy? Is he really, like, a secret agent for the UN? Kensuke added, a fascinated gleam in his eyes. Shinji shrugged. I guess. Breaking the story for a bit. He wouldn't be wrong. The doctor was pretty much a secret agent in his third incarnation. And I mean a James Bond kind of secret agent. Not quite the level of James Bond, but close enough that they could get away with it on the TV without getting the censors all riled up. Shinji shrugged. I guess. Do you think we can trust him, though? Hikari whispered, her eyes darted to the lab door and back. I mean, I know he's a teacher, but... Shinji scratched the back of his head. I think we should listen to him. So, he actually knows what he's doing? He's not just some kind of crazy person from off the street? Shinji hesitated. I think we should listen to him. The doctor flung the lab door open. Shinji, perfect. He shoved a pile of plastic into Shinji's arms. Here, put this on. Miss Ayanami, I need you to check this whole floor. Bring me any cleaning bleach you can bring up. Ray nodded and disappeared. Captain, what's the word? Misato crossed her arms. The science division's still running simulations, but it seems that you might have a point. Brilliant! The doctor grinned. Love it when that happens. Well, not that there was any doubt, but the peer's review is always nice. Misato rolled her eyes. Now, I think I could put something together in here, but I'm gonna need a good half hour or so. Think you can hold the barricades that long? Depends. What kind of something are we talking about? Chemical mixture. The doctor pinched the bridge of his nose. Non-lethal, aerosol-based, won't affect any of us, but should react with the hydrogen in the other lot's bloodstreams, keep them from detonating themselves while sedating them. We'll have to flood the building with it somehow. Maybe push it out through the heating vents. We're closer to the cooling tower on the roof. That way we'll at least have air support. fine. Just be careful, there's no telling what might set them off. A non-lethal ordnance only. I mean it. Misato narrowed her eyes. The doctor grinned again, and he rubbed his hands together without any apparent concern for the fact that he just ordered the city's high military commander around as he would a waitress. Shinji winced. Right then, no time to waste. He vanished back into the lab. Back to the lab again. They all stared at the lab door for a moment. Misato shook her head angrily. God, she growled under her breath. Why do the cute ones have to be so much damn trouble? Shinji looked up at her. Wait, what? Nothing, never mind. She turned and marched down the hallway. Kongo shrugged and trudged after her. Shinji watched her go, then looked down at what the doctor had handed to him. It took him a second to recognize it as a bright yellow hazardous materials suit, like he'd seen in movies, complete with a bulky transparent hood and an attached respirator. He blinked. Maybe the doctor wanted him to help out in the lab, or something. Shinji? Kensuke coughed awkwardly. Been meaning to ask, could you do me a favor? Sure, what? I know you're a lot more used to this than we all here are, but, would you mind not smiling so much? You're really creeping everyone out. Oh, God, yeah. I'm what? Shinji immediately covered his mouth with one hand. The corners of his lips hurt. Oh, God, was he actually getting used to this? I'm sorry, I didn't even know what it was. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay, really, just, yeah. They retreated down the hallway, leaving Shinji standing alone by the lab door. He looked down at the hazmat suit in his hands. His reflection in the hood stared back at him. What the hell is wrong with me? It's probably nothing. You're just a guy on an adventure. That's what you do when you're on an adventure, and you have to go, and you have to do the thing. You gotta go bada boopy, bada bing, bada boom. You gotta go put it on, and maybe something will happen. I don't know. Shinji sat in the hallway next to the lab door, wrapped head and toe in bright yellow plastic. And more besides, as the suit was at least 2 or 3 sizes too large for him, the doctor had yet to appear. There was the sound of a door opening. Shinji raised his head, but instead of the doctor, he saw Misato step out from one of the classrooms down the hall. After that, get in touch with Mikhail Kerensky at the Russian branch. See if we can get hold of any of that one chemical agent they used at Beslin, she said into the cell phone. Shinji noticed that she held the doctor's wallet open in her other hand. Could you just run that ID code I gave you through the database a few more times just to be sure? Great, thanks, I'll be in touch. She hung up and sighed. Shinji felt he needed to say something. His name's not John Smith. Misato twisted around with a start. She obviously hadn't seen him there. Sorry. Shinji pulled back the hood. Misato let out a breath. Oh, it's you, Shinji. Yeah. Shinji swallowed. So, it's not really Dr. Smith or anything like that. It's just the doctor. Just the doctor? Misato wrinkled her brow. You don't think that's a little weird? Shinji shrugged. They lapsed into an uncomfortable silence. Shinji took a deep breath. Look, I'm sorry I didn't tell you about him. He asked me not to, and I don't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. Misato set her jaw. It's fine, Shinji. It is? Yeah, it's... Misato crossed her arms and turned her head away from him. It's just that, I guess, I just hoped after everything that's happened. Shinji looked down at the floor, a sick sort of feeling in his stomach. God, couldn't she have just done the skull thing? She shook her head. Look, forget about it. It doesn't matter right now. We'll talk after we're out of this mess. Right now I need a word with whatever his name is. She crossed past him to the laboratory door. Look, Shinji burst out. Just don't kill him, okay? Please. He's been so nice to me, and I don't want anyone to get hurt. Yeah, well, Misao opened the door. That's life. She stepped into the room and shut the door behind her. Misao hesitated on the other side of the door. Shit, why the hell did she just said that? Stupid. It's not like she had any intention of killing the man. Well, okay, unless he attacked her or exploded or turned into an angel or something. Her scars were itching again. She pushed it all out of her head. Worry about it later. Get Shinji out of this first. Focus on the mission. Game time. She squared her shoulders and turned towards the room. The lab had obviously seen better days. The tables are covered with half-dismantled machinery and improvised equipment. Just in front of her, an alembic spun around on what remained of a CD player, while a metal wastepaper basket stewed away over a gas burner. Bare wires and glass tubes stretched across the room, up to the ceiling and back down again. The doctor stood on the other side of the room, head down, pointing that beeping whirly thing at a beaker. For a moment she thought he hadn't heard her come in. Then he said, without looking up, "So, what's news from the front, General?" Nothing. She put his ID card down on the closest table. No sign of the enemy on either side. They seemed to be very quiet all of a sudden. A little too quiet, you mean? Is there any other kind? Any guess what they're up to? Nothing good. Other than that, the doctor shook the beaker, apparently satisfied. He put it down on the table and connected it to some of the tubing. So the gas you're making, do you really think it'll work? Of course it will. Why wouldn't it? If I hadn't seen Wayne O'Hara. Misao shrugged. I'll give it a shot. But just so we're clear, if it doesn't get the job done, I'm flooding this building with nitrous oxide. Won't work, but knock yourself out? The doctor paused. Well, don't literally knock yourself out. But, see, that's almost clever. Wish I'd done that on purpose now. Misao allowed herself to smirk, just a little. An electric rice cooker on the table started to whistle. The doctor grabbed a nearby spatula and whacked it until it stopped. So, look, she crossed her arms. It's possible that I might have come on a little strong earlier. No, you really think? But look at it from my point of view. I still don't understand why you did things this way. Nerves fully chartered by the UN. Why would you choose to manipulate Shinji instead of contacting us directly? Well, manipulate's a bit of a... Look, could this wait? The doctor turned around. He suddenly looked very tired. I still need to put another compression cell together, and all I've got left on hand is a vacuum cleaner and a box of spooks. I need to say that again. I need to say that again. I still need to put together another compression cell, and all I've got left on hand is a vacuum cleaner and a box of spooks. Misao stuck out her chin. So explain it to me quickly then. Why would the UN keep secrets from Nerve in the middle of a war? Well, that is... The doctor scratched the back of his head. The Convention Against Child Soldiers is signed, you mean? She stared at him. Is that seriously what this is about? That's your concerns. The doctor opened his mouth and then looked away. Is that all? She had to repress the urge to laugh. Do you actually think we choose to do the things this way? What kind of stupid monsters do you think we are, anyway? Well, I mean, do you think I like this? It occurred to Masato that she was shouting. It also occurred to her that she didn't care. Do you think I enjoy sending kids into combat? Do you seriously think I wouldn't take Shinji's place in a heartbeat if I could? The doctor turned away from her. But I can't. No one can't. There's an entire hospital up north filled with soldiers who tried and failed. I've been there. I've seen it myself. This is our only chance. The Avas are our only hope against the angels. The children are the only ones who can control them. So what do you want me to do instead? Keep Shinji away from danger, even if it gets all of us, included him, killed? Or should I help him fight for his only chance, our only chance to survive? Because let me make myself clear, Doctor. It might be easy for you to stand on the sidelines and judge us for our methods, but I don't get to sacrifice the entire human race just so I can sleep better at night. So why the panic attacks? Fuck, I said it wrong. I said it wrong! So why the panic attacks? The doctor asked quietly. I caught her off guard. Panic attacks Shinji keeps happening. The panic attacks Shinji keeps having. The doctor stood up straight by the lab table, his back to her. If he's as important as you say he is, why isn't he being treated for that? Why would you let that go by? Misato narrowed her eyes. What are you talking about? What attacks? Oh, don't talk like you don't know about it. Any routine exam would pick it up. And besides, it's not like you don't have this whole city bugged from top to bottom. He was speaking rapid fire now, almost too fast for her to keep up with. Now, sure, you could be worried about medication interactions with the neural interface, but that's something you'd be able to test or compensate for. And wouldn't it be worth the risk anyway? Even from just a functional point of view, wouldn't do to have him panicking in the driver's seat now, would it? And then there's that law, that one that keeps people outside the system from talking to him. Why would you do that? Why would you do more to isolate him, more than he already is even? The itching from her scars started to spread outward. She distractedly scratched at them. I don't know, operational security mostly doesn't matter. It matters. There's a new sort of edge in the doctor's voice now that she hadn't heard before. Not even when she'd been pointing a gun at his face. Because humans are innately social creatures. Even people like Shinji, especially people like Shinji, you need each other. The same way you need oxygen. Support from others makes you live longer, process trauma better. So why would you deny him that? Why would you expect him to fight for the human race, on his own, without knowing anything about the people he's supposed to save? I didn't. I don't, Misato shouted. And that's what the school is for. Why was she even listening to this crap? And what the hell did he mean by you? This was insane. She hadn't let Shinji alone. She tried to help him, tried her best, invited him into her home. Except that had been her idea, hadn't it? The commander and the others, they had all been perfectly willing to let Shinji go off and live completely on his own before she'd step in. She felt a sharp stabbing pain in her side. She reached out and grabbed the spot. What the hell? The scars hadn't actually hurt like this in years. The doctor snorted. Oh, sure, the budget the size of a small country, and the best you could do for him is send him to middle school. Don't get me wrong, it's a start, but plenty of issues to sort out there without the giant robots thrown in. I might just be able to chalk all that up to simple incompetence if it wasn't for one thing. Just one tiny little thing. Psychology doesn't exist here. No textbooks, journals, or self-help pamphlets in the libraries. Not a single counselor, psychiatrist, neurologist, support group, or suicide hotline in the phone books. No information on the local computer networks. And it's not like you lot have never had Freud or the DSM here, because trust me, I checked. City of the future with a big international presence covered by computers running predictive behavior models. That's no accident. That's design. The pain spread outward to the rest of her chest. What was going on here? Misato clutched her ribs. What are you saying? I'm saying someone built an entire city with the idea of leaving one 14-year-old boy with absolutely nowhere to turn to. Oh, given just enough to keep him useful maybe, but not enough. Never enough to save him. Stuck in the middle of a darkest hour that never ends? But why would you do that? If he's supposed to save the world, why would you set him up to fail? Misato tried to say something, but suddenly felt like her lungs were on fire, like she couldn't breathe. The answer, of course, the doctor said, is that you wouldn't, unless the point was to break him. The doctor turned towards her, and Misao couldn't help but take a step back. Nothing in his tone had prepared her for the pure elemental rage etched on every line of his face. "And it all makes sense, doesn't it?" he continued without so much as raising his voice. "Tear all his hopes and dreams, leave nothing but an empty shell, just another weapon component." His mouth twisted in disgust. "Like Ray, you lot have done so much more time to work on her, haven't they? No identity to speak of, no emotions, just follows orders. The perfect soldier for an eternal war." He took a step back towards her. It occurred to Misao that her back was pressed against the classroom wall. "So to answer your question, that's the kind of monster I think you are," he said, his eyes burning with some strange, hideous anger. "And let me make myself clear, Captain. Me and monsters, we don't get along." Shinji heard the door slam shut. He looked to see Misato doubled over in pain, hands across her chest, breathing hard. "Misato, are you all right?" She raised her head, sweat dripping from her brow, and stared at him right in the eye. He flinched, but looked back at her, bewildered. He couldn't quite place her expression. It almost felt like she was studying him, as if she'd never seen him before in her life. After a second, she'd straightened up and, without a word, strode down the hallway and into one of the empty classrooms. Shinji watched her go, mouth open. He walked into the lab to find the doctor staring out into space, idly running his fingers through his hair. He didn't look like he'd been shot, at least. "Doctor, are you all right?" The doctor seemed to snap out of it. Oh, yeah, fine." He scratched the back of his head. "It's just, you ever have something that sounded really good in your head, but when you go and say it just sounds all over the top?" "Sometimes, I guess." Shinji stepped into the room and shut the door behind him. "I usually just get around it by not talking." "Yeah, a bit late for that in my case." The doctor straightened up and looked around. "Right then, back to work." "Wait, something's not right. I've missed some..." He looked at Shinji and suddenly jumped forward. His finger pointed. "Oh, the mask! Put on the mask." "What, this?" Shinji pulled the hazmat suit hood out from under his arm. "But how am I supposed to talk with this thing?" "I'll just do it. I'll explain in a second." The doctor gestured frantically. Shinji pulled the hood back over his head and started to pull up the zipper. "Besides, didn't you see it was a military issue? Has that whole speaker radio thing in the... here." He pointed the screwdriver at Shinji. There was a crackle inside the hood. Okay." Shinji could vaguely hear the sound of his own voice being relayed by a speaker somewhere on the outside of the suit. The doctor let out a deep breath and relaxed. "So, why am I wearing this thing exactly?" "Oh, for the smell," the doctor said. "Well, that is to help mask your scent. The mask lot outside, the bloodhounds, remember? If they're related to the thing we saw on the train, stands to reason that they must have tracked one of us back here. As I put the sprinklers on when we were downstairs. All that water in the air washes out the trail, you see?" He turned aside and tapped on a complicated device constructed out of a portable ice chest, PVC piping, and a snow globe. "Anyway, I fiddled with the suit's material a bit. Should keep them from getting a lock on you, as long as you keep it on." "Well, okay." Shinji glanced down at the yellow plastic suit. "So, why aren't you wearing it then?" "Oh, huh?" The doctor paused midway through pulling out a fire extinguisher from one of the lab sinks. Probably wouldn't help in my case. Anyway, I stand out a bit too much around here scent-wise." "Why?" "Well," the doctor started to disassemble the extinguisher's valve. "There's the phone brand hair conditioner for one, but main thing is I'm not human." Really?" Shinji stared at him. "But I thought you said you were from, like, some kind of parallel Earth." Oh, well, I spent a fair bit of time there, it's true, but even then I'm not exactly what you'd call a local. Oh. Something back in the back of the room exploded. The doctor glanced over his shoulder, then went back to what he was doing. Makoto, I've started up one of the classroom computers, Misato said into her cell phone. Get me remote access to the internal network. Terminal address. She read off the code printed on the outside of the computer's tower. AH2251960. Sure thing, Captain, the lieutenant answered. She hung up. Within a few moments, the familiar nerve login came up on screen, requesting her username and password. Instead of putting in her own credentials, she entered Ritsuko's, and not the one with the password she left out on the post-it notes on her desk. The secret account, the one Misato wasn't even supposed to know about. She went to the pilot medical records. Ray's were still off limits as usual, but Shinji's reports were all there. One for each of his weekly exams, plus the observation notes from his post-combat stays in the hospital. She tried a text search for panic attack. When that came up with nothing, she tried panic, then fear. She finally got a hit on terror. 1:25 a.m. Nurse reports clear sign of post-traumatic night terrors. Symptoms within expected parameters. No medication administered. As per standing orders, this information has been redacted from the final report. She stared at the screen for what felt like forever, trying to make sense of it, trying to make it all add up in her head, trying to prove the doctor and his smug, crazy, self-satisfied, arrogant, dull logic wrong. It was strange. She screwed up a lot of things in her time. Jet alone, the attack on the school today, Kaji, just to start with, but she'd never really been able to imagine herself failing at something so completely. She ran her hands through her hair. There's a lot of that in this story, folks. You're probably gonna see more of it. How did I not see this? Shinji stood back from where the doctor laid the half-dismantled vacuum cleaner across the floor, a large box in his arms. So, if you're not from the other Earth, where do you come from? Does it matter? The doctor motioned with one hand. Shinji passed him a spork. It's not like you're going to recognize the name of something. Hey, Shinji looked down. Yeah, I guess. The doctor looked up at him and sighed. Oh, fine. Let it never be said I can stand to see a man in a hazmat suit cry. Gallifrey. I was born on a planet called Gallifrey. Gallifrey? Garfey? Well, he was right. Shinji had certainly never heard of a place like that. The doctor pressed the screwdriver against the vacuum's motor. So what about you? Huh? What about you before all this? Oh, I lived with my teacher. Sometime later, it would occur to Shinji that this was the first time anyone ever directly asked him that question. Well, I mean, one of my teachers, see, when I was 6, I was sent to this place, the Shimokita Special Evaluation School. It's this place in the mountains they set up after Second Impact, where people could send their children to learn while they stayed and worked on the flooded parts of the country, so I stayed there. During the summers and the holidays, I lived with one of the teachers. Why, so you mean you were at boarding school? The doctor grimaced. Change my mind. I don't think I want to know. It wasn't that bad, Shinji interjected. Really, I mean, it was peaceful and the teachers were nice, usually. The doctor gave him an odd sort of sad look that Shinji couldn't quite read. The motor made a clicking sound. With a sudden roar, the vacuum started up, and there we go, bada rumba! Grinning like a maniac, he leapt to his feet and stretched the vacuum's hose over to the snow globe thing, where he plugged it into a spare piece of pipe. He tapped one of the glass tubes that ran overhead. Oh, see, now we're cooking. Oh, and with the little bubbles even. Love them little bubbles. Just call me Bubble Man from now on. Oh, damn, bit rubbish this nickname's going. I'm pretty sure it's trademarked by someone. I think it was Nintendo? Capcom? I don't know. Shinji found himself smiling. He couldn't help himself. You really enjoy this, don't you? Enjoy what? This. Shinji spread out his arms over the vast array of slapdash machinery across the room. I mean, the whole running in science and saving people thing. Oh, yeah, of course, love it. The doctor scratched the back of his head. I should say that parts of it I could do without. Losing people, seeing people die or get hurt, I hate that. Always have, always will, but every now and again I get one of those days where I really actually can pull it all off, where the plan works out, and everyone lives. He smiled and stared out into space. There's a lot of that in this story. Like he could just barely see something wonderful in the distance. Those are the days you aim for, Shinji, that you fight for. 'Cause those are the ones that make it all worth it. Every scrap of trouble. Suddenly, the entire building shook. The lights flickered on and off. Shinji looked around the room wildly. For a moment he thought another one of the doctor's contraptions had exploded, but he couldn't see any damage or fire or stuff. The doctor went pale. Down the hall. They threw open the lab door and dashed outside. The hallway looked exactly the same to Shinji. You could see Mr. Kongo and some of the parents at the barricade at the other end. Kensuke stuck his head out from the door to one of the third-year classroom. He collided into Masato where, as she stepped out of the room next to the lab, she saw Shinji and flinched. What happened? She started to ask. There was a loud crack. The door to the empty classroom midway down the hall fell to the ground. A very tall schoolgirl stepped out into the hall. She didn't have the angel mask, but her skin looked like marble, and she looked far too thin, and her clothes were all dirty and mud-ridden. The doctor groaned. Through the ceiling, he muttered. Clever girl. Was really hoping they weren't going to try that. The tall girl lifted up her head and screamed, and the horde came pouring out behind her. Jeez, Sorry, I have to take a bit of a breather for a bit. There's still a bit of story left, a few parts. Geez, 6 parts. 6 parts. Okay, I'm gonna have to stop it here. I've been going on for almost 2 hours. I'd like to thank however many people are listening this for listening to it. And if you're still looking at the video, oh, what are those? Those look like things that you can click. Those things look like they can. That thing looks like you can use it to subscribe to my channel. Wow. Wow, and that other thing you can use it to watch the last video. Just you know what? You should totally do that. You should subscribe and hit that like button. Share this with your friends. They might like it. You should really let your friends know that you like this. Please do it. Please do it.